Good evening, mi gente. This is Ray Collazo and my intrepid co-host and producer of this special V-cast of the Founding Translation V-blog, V-cast. My compadre and producer of this special edition, Elbert Garcia. LB, I'm
Hey,
fired up,
Ray.
dog.
Yo,
I
I'm
want to
telling you,
rush
it's great
this
to be
extra
here. Great
inning.
to be here.
This is exciting. Thank you so much to my dear compadre and great friend and great activist in his own right, Elbert Garcia, for setting up this special V-cast. This is your host, Ray Collazo. For those not familiar, we host the now in the process of rebranding as the Founding Translation, not only podcast, but radio show, which you can hear at WPPM LP 106.5 in Philadelphia. We will be doing that show for my Facebook and social media watchers. We'll be doing that show with our regular co-host, Yaya Rivera, tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we're going to really take a deeper dive into the crisis on the border and some local Philadelphia issues and some other topics. But we really wanted to, because we're going to do this anyway on social media, we really wanted to break down day one of the debates, which featured 10, yes, count them, 10 Democratic candidates. It happened in LB's second hometown, his current home in Miami, Florida. And some of that Miami fiebre was in the mix. We want to talk about that. Elbert Garcia, I mean, you were just miles from the event. I mean, do you feel the heat from what just took place?
Yo, I mean, people were hyped. I think people were hyped. You saw a bunch of, and you've been seeing a bunch of watch parties. Different folks are doing it all day today. Folks were out in the streets. Really had a real feel as if the presidential race had already started. And so you saw folks doing a bunch of different things. You had over the last couple of days. Different folks who were impacted by the different issues, really trying to kind of be out there. You had union folks organizing and out there. You had local progressives talking about what they were expecting to hear. You had a great community panel that She the People and New Florida Majority did in terms of specifically talking about women's issues and women of color leadership and what they were expecting. So
Unidos US and Florida New Majority and other organizations are part of the Tax the Rich. The kickoff to the Tax the Rich bus campaign. And Dina Navas, exactly. my colleague, the Venezolana, and of course, our great friend Tomas Kennedy was also part of that. You also had activists and several candidates, most notably Senator Elizabeth Warren, going to Homestead, the facility that's, and we'll talk more about this on the show tomorrow, but the facility that's housing over 2,000 young people that we've imprisoned, essentially, as a country. Shamefully, I believe Jane Sanders, Senator Sanders' wife, was there with my homeboy and a senior advisor for that campaign, Chuck Roach, other community leaders. I think Natasha, our friend, was down in Homestead as well. So a lot of, and as they reminded us, y'all are just getting here. We've been here for these children for quite some time. Elbert, I wanted to ask you, I have some thoughts here, lots of thoughts. And of course, actually remind people, LB, that people can actually jump in on this conversation. Let people know how technically they can do that.
Yeah, I know that folks are watching us. I know that some of us are watching it on. We're streaming this on Facebook. We're streaming this also on Twitter. But the best way to do that is to click on the link that's in there on the Crowdcast. Register and quickly and jump into the chat room. And if you've got a webcam, we'll bring you on live as well.
Yes.
We'll invite you up on screen and get you up on there. That's really important. And we can do that. And I see. I think we got two. We got Michelangelo Martinez. Martinez also joined on his. Big shout out to them. Again, folks on Facebook, folks on who are looking at this on Periscope and on Twitter, click on the link, go to Crowdcast, join the discussion in if you want to just also get up live on here as well.
Oh, absolutely. And we really appreciate particularly our friends that are on the East Coast staying up pretty late to check out this conversation. So, LB, I have some thoughts, but just wanted to get your very initial thoughts on what was what's your first big picture item you wanted to share as it relates to sort of the part one of the first debate of the Democratic presidential primary.
Ray, I thought one of the things that all the candidates, first of all, it was a feisty kind of discussion. I think, after the first couple of minutes, people were kind of all talking about their positions, and then, had to be the New Yorker. De Blasio comes in, starts interrupting people. And you really got a sense that people were really, that these candidates were living these issues, that they were really trying to fight for it. And I like that. I like seeing that. that folks. I think the biggest surprise for me, because we just haven't seen as much, is that we got a lot of fire out of Julian Castro. I mean, and not trying to not trying to play up the stereotype of the fiery Latino, but he didn't, he didn't come to play. Like, I mean, he really, I think, of all the folks there, I mean, I think he really came out there, or, he came out swinging. I was impressed with Elizabeth Warren. I think, she's been, there's a reason why she's been, growing in the polls and surging in the polls there. And I think we got a chance to see that, a little bit of that tonight.
I think before I get into my comments, I think we look at this very similarly in terms of sort of winners and losers, who did better, who did worse, who was kind of, we'll get into that, who got ignored. But I think the first a big picture takeaway I got was that when I was watching this today, to me, it was very analogous. Elbert, when a new college basketball season starts, and before they have like their conference games, they do these like exotic what they call preseason tournaments. They have the Maui Classic, the Alaskan Shootout.
Yeah.
You play some games in the Bahamas. Part of the reason they do that is that the teams aren't really set. The semester just started. You got a freshman class, a lot of turnover. So this very much came off like particularly that first 15, 20 minutes, came off like the first debate. And I think one of the things I want to take people get away from this is that, in my mind, I saw certain candidates that maybe just performed mediocre today, who I think in 6 months could be better. And so the question for them is going to be, are they going to be able to stick around for 6 months? And will the electorate allow them to sort of grow into their campaign? Remember, at this same point in 2007, Senator Obama at that point was not the candidate he was in December of 2007 and leading up to the Iowa caucus. So that was kind of my first takeaway. A lot of nervousness. Apparently, and you know this from television, LB, that apparently everybody was very crunched together. It was a very tight stage. So there's a lot of nervous energy. I don't think anyone sort of hit it out the park, came out the block super strong. So that's the first thing. Let's not overread into any of it, particularly the first half of the first debate in the session. And then the second thing is that, and this is one of the things that the candidates that are able to stick around are going to have to do, is that they're going to have to connect with people on an emotional level, in a real level. There was still, people are working their material, right? So, and they tried to begin every answer with sort of relating on a personal story, and but there was a lot of these sounded like politicians, good politicians, progressive politicians.
Yeah.
But I think, I don't think anyone is on fire and sort of connected viscerally with anyone. Even though I think your buddy from New York could have had a shot at that. So those are
it's hard. It's hard. I think as New Yorkers,
those are the first thoughts I have.
I think as New Yorkers, I think we see De Blasio with a little bit of a silver BS lining, right? I mean, I think that the issue. Look, the issue. He's a policy guy. He knows this stuff. I think there's no doubt that stages like this were made from him. Were made for him to a certain degree. He knows how to speak. He knows how to run. Give it to him. I mean, he knows how to campaign, right? And I think he knows how to speak to an audience. But again, I think the question of always for De Blasio has always been his management skills, right? That being said, if you're talking about someone who's trying to create or build an inclusive team in New York, at least from the start, at least he's attempted to do that. Yeah, he's had some issues with Governor Cuomo, but at the end of the day, who hasn't? And so, I mean, I think that's certainly a discussion for another time in terms of pulling in all those New Yorkers and folks and kind of really seeing, because I think most New Yorkers are saying, look, you're having a tough time trying to run the city. Why are you even thinking about trying to be president? But
run them trains, dog. I wish somebody had said that, like, are you supposed to get some trains running? He's out here talking. Yeah. What's interesting, and I think it speaks to it being the fact that De Blasio, I think, did relatively well. And I almost, independent of what I feel about him as a candidate, I almost feel like I wanted to hear more from him, frankly, because I think he was able to articulate a vision. I think he's good at TV, and I didn't realize that. I'm a Philly guy. I see him, but I don't really know him. And the way you do, certainly. And I think that it showed that even some of our stronger candidates have some work to do to just kind of connect with people in that medium. And we knew that certain people were going to not be as strong. We'll talk about Beto in a second. Even his camp was reporting that he was a little nervous because he's kind of more better in retail politics, and you're up here having kind of a heavier policy debate and kind of and taking these slings and arrows, and he's the one that got hit the most. There's no question about it. Really interesting. So,
and don't sleep. I mean, it's a big stage. It's a big stage. I mean, we're not talking about I mean, it's physical. I mean, like just in terms of being in the Arch Center. I mean, you've got these great musicals that come in, and I mean, like it's a really great space. But there's a lot of people up there, and I think I mean, you saw it on the face of Tim Ryan when he was first speaking. I mean, Tim looked like
a deer out of headlights. He looked shook.
Oh my God.
Shook.
And he came back and he was okay, but I mean, just those first
he got it together. But the way he was standing, and well, I mean, the bottom line, Tim Ryan, he's a congressman. Even though I think he had a good second half for him, but he's a congressman. But let's get into it. I think you remind people. Okay, I want to just have a moment to share this on Facebook. Remind people again, LB, how they can log in. If Ebly and Michael have questions, how they can participate in this conversation.
Sure. If you're in the crowdcast room, on the side on the right, there's a chat space. Definitely ask a question. Let us know, where you're coming from also tonight. If you're following us on Facebook, we'll also put in the link again. But it's crowdcast.io/0626 post debate. I think that's the address. And just click on it. You'll see a little button that says join the discussion, and then either with your Facebook or your Google or create thing, you can create a quick account and kind of log in. And again, kind of join in and on the discussion. And again, if we've got a couple people here, those folks, if you guys definitely want to kind of join on and hop in, hop if you've got a webcam, then raise your hand and we'll pull you up on the stage. But let us also know in terms of what you're thinking about. So that's, again, go to crowdcast.io/0626 post debate. And again, I'll put the link also again on our Facebook, and again, and also via Twitter, which again, we're simultaneously broadcasting on Periscope and on Facebook, as well as on
YouTube Live, right? We're on YouTube Live,
and on YouTube Live, all on the Rays podcast pages of
Absolutely.
YouTube. Also, while we're out here, I want to give a shout out to the folks at Law at the Margins. Law at the Margins is a law and academic and activist media platform. We just did a webinar last week on abortion rights, and again, thanks to them for kind of hosting, at least technically, the platform here. I do some interactive work with them, and so again, thanks to Shantoli and her crew for letting us have this.
Absolutely, Shantoli, very super helpful tonight with your assistance. Let's talk about the candidates. I think. Well, let's talk about Julian. I think we'll get into war in a second. The people I wrote down as the two winners tonight for different reasons. They're in different places in the campaign, and it's relative, right? But I think outside of the obvious, I think Julian Castro was definitely the biggest winner of the night. Julian Castro, came off like a leader. I think it's kind of the best way to put it. He came off like a leader. He wasn't afraid to push back on Beto, which I think was probably the highlight of the night. That interaction, that King es más macho moment entre lo Tejano, ¿verdad? San Antonio, El Paso. And I think he came off, particularly during the immigration segment, as not only just knowledgeable, passionate, but not afraid to state his truth. And it's interesting because Julian doesn't come from an immigrant rights orientation. His mother's, an English speaking, really from more of a traditional civil rights lane, right? And obviously being in electoral politics, being a mayor and secretary of HUD, so housing is really his expertise. But I think Julian, and then throughout the night, he showed strength. And by the way, not from a Latino perspective, the only person that uttered the word Puerto Rico all night, and really the only one that kind of really put a face and sort of a visceral, captured the emotions of what we're all going through as it relates to the immigration debate. So clearly to me, Julian walked on that stage as a sort of a 1%er, and he came off that stage like a candidate, a legit, second tier still, of course. But I think he's in the game now. There's no question about that, LB.
Yeah, I think the thing with Julian too is that I think people, I mean, for a lot of people, this was an introduction to him. I mean, yes, they've heard whispers. Yes, they've heard that there's a.
I mean, the DNC thing was what, 10 years ago or something? Like whenever 12. I mean, when he spoke at the DNC, which was his introduction, that was a long time ago.
Right. And I think most people, look, honestly, I think most people, if you ask them who's the guy from Texas that's running, most people would say Beto, right? And so I think in that way, I think he opened up some folks' eyes, that this wasn't just some token candidate, right? To kind of, stroke the diversity theories. He was coming in with some ideas. Right. He was coming in with some plans. And again, I was impressed is maybe not the right word, but again, it seemed like these candidates were trying to get their 2-second check off lists of like different issues that they were open to, right? And so it impressed me that he was the first candidate to talk about trans folks. I mean, that when he was talking about
I saw a lot of points on that on social media. It happened a few times tonight, and maybe it was just bad luck, but a lot of times Julian would say something and then Booker would kind of basically repeat it. And then because then Booker wanted to jump in on the trans conversation, but Julian had already dropped that dime. And there was another conversation I think is related to immigration, where basically, and even criminal justice, Julian's the one that mentioned Sandra Bland's name, and Taquan McDonald's name, and talked about Charleston. And at the end, in the closing remarks, to me, he came off as strong as anyone, specifically saying, we got to knock out Trump and saying adios a Trump. So I think, I think he captured a moment in time, being the first debate being in Miami. So I think the Latino flavor, it's like he's a Texas guy, but I think it was kind of home court for him. So I think he got into that moment, and I gotta give Julian a lot of props. Odds are he's not gonna win anything, in terms of this. But to me, I'm proud of him as a guy, Latino from the same, activist generation. We share the same great mutual mentor, Andy Hernandez from San Antonio. His mother's one of the greatest activists, community street activists we've ever had. I mean, I just love that woman. I interact a lot with his brother. I mean, we just spent some time together a few months ago in Washington. They're good folks. And so if I came off anything on a personal level, going to Julian, he's probably not going to win it, but damn, I'm proud of the brother because he's not backing down from this moment at all. He's really stepping it up. I give, very much like a Mexican fighter. He moved up in weight and he's still hanging with the big boys. There was a lot of discussion on social media like, Bendito, Julian looking short. And they should have even at the thing. And he's next to these short people, tall people. But guess what? He came off, I think, to be very strong. I'm surprised. And we talked about this, LB, on the show a million times. I'm surprised since day one how well he's done. I think he's run a very good campaign. And I think he's got something for him. I really do.
And I will say this. I think I won't say of all the candidates, but certainly when he was bringing up all those points, they didn't seem forced, right? No. It seemed very natural. It seemed like a flow. It wasn't like, someone just gave him some talking points or whatever. Like this is something that either he has thought about a lot or he's like, but again, I was impressed with just how natural all those points that were important. He was like, it's not just about reproductive rights. It's about reproductive justice. I mean, that's some activist shit. Like that's not no usually elected politician who kind of normally. And again, this is the first night. No one's getting. But again, I think if you're somebody who's trying to make, to leave a mark or a memory on folks, I think he turned some heads, and I think he turned some heads of folks who normally are, I think, outside of the Latino community, and said, hey, wait a minute, maybe we should be hearing this guy and. Again, he's got at this stage of the game just a good shot as any to at least excite the base.
Absolutely. And you know what? You're right. He took the mantle, not only sort of the Latino mantle with immigration. I mean, Puerto Rico, he didn't get into it, but he mentioned it. He dropped it, but he also took on a mantle of a civil rights champion, which, obviously outside of Booker, I don't think anyone really. Beto's done that in the past. We're going to talk about Beto in a second, but I don't think Beto really took that opportunity, didn't really plant that, today. And I think that's a good thing. Particularly, I'm sure there's a lot of people, particularly in the African-American community, that, maybe we're looking at someone like a Beto or, is someone like Kamala Booker, how would you say, viable? And I think they're walking away impressed by Julian. The other side of that coin, of course, is Beto O'Rourke. I'm going to start with you, Albie. What do you think about Beto tonight? I saw very wild, different opinions on social media throughout the night. What's your take on Beto?
Well, I think a lot of people. I mean, I think Beto came in with a lot of people asking, look, we know you excited a lot of people in Texas, but do you have any substance? Do you have something that's real, right? And I think too many times it almost sounded like it almost sounded like he was, I don't want to say a caricature of himself, but it's like you had the usual 30 to 40-second intro that he does, right? Which is like very storied and very narrative and very like that, and then like talking. So, I thought that, I thought he held his own. I don't think he surprised. I don't think he was, I don't think he gave a very surprising performance. I don't think he necessarily edged himself out there, right? And so again, I think, and again, I don't think, who's to say he needed to, right? Because he's already coming in with a lot of name recognition and a lot of folks there. But again, he didn't give me something new. It's like those, those like Dancing with the Stars, right? It's like, he came in, he in some way he played it safe. He made sure he didn't have any unforced errors. He gets to go on to the next round primarily because he didn't make a mistake. But at the same time, at some point, you got to wonder, like, how does he create some separation? I'm not sure I don't think he really, made any separation in this, in this round, right? Or in this night.
Yeah. It was interesting because I think that, that might've been the most interesting moment of the night, the Castro, what ended up being, and, de Blasio, it's almost like wrestling. De Blasio threw the first chair and kind of took it out of the debate format and made it a bit of a battle royale, talking about healthcare and essentially the who's more progressive debate, talking about Warren and some of the other folks. And then somehow it evolved into a Castro Beto conversation, actually during immigration, when basically Castro picked on him around, basically the policy that would essentially could decriminalize unlawful entry into the country. And so I thought that the fact that Julian took that risk and took on Beto one-on-one on an issue that, was in Beto's wheelhouse, I think showed a lot of guts. And I think I kind of threw Beto off. I think he was surprised that that happened. And that continued to happen throughout the night where people would dar un puño a Beto. And I think that I think from a body language perspective, I think he looked a little unsure of how to deal with those moments. And my overall take on Beto in this conversation is that, Beto just did so, I think, in terms of, he's supposed to be an excitable guy. He wasn't too exciting. And I think but I believe if he's again allowed to fight another day, I think he's going to be a much, much better candidate and formable candidate by November, December. I don't think a lot of people are going to come away with that. I think he's going to generally get bad reviews tonight. But I really believe that I think it's there. He's like a prospect, the talent is there. And I think the policy will evolve. Again, Obama was not great on policy when he first ran at this point in, 11 years ago, 12 years ago. But I think Beto is going to come out of this, with some lumps that I think he probably needed. But, he's got a way to go, but I don't think I don't think he took a step forward, but I don't think he took a step back, if that makes sense. Let's get into the Warren, because I think you and I both agree that it was a good night for Warren. I don't think Warren knocked anybody out. I don't think Warren, which is so difficult with 10 people. There's just limited time. They basically gave Warren the second hour off, if you kind of noticed. Because they kind of spread it around. But I think Warren sort of definitely looked like the lead dog tonight. And I think she was treated that way. I think perception's reality. If you're getting treated this way and she came out clean. Nobody really hit her. De Blasio tried. And, that stirred a good conversation, but I don't think it really got any mud on her. So I think Warren walks away happy with how the night ended up, but I don't think it was a coronation or I also don't think she pushed anyone else out of the way.
Well, I think she also, but and again, maybe my heart leans a little more towards Massachusetts in general for some things, but she had a lot potentially to lose coming in, right? Here's the surge, here's the person kind of doing it, and so I think, as opposed to, I think you're right to a certain degree that she didn't surprise her when she came in. She had her plan. She has talking, but I think I think sometimes we can underestimate how hard that is, right? How hard it is to to keep the momentum. And I think as opposed to Beto, which I think wanted to be more excited by him.
Yeah.
I think in terms of Elizabeth Warren, like, she still excited a bunch of people. I mean, at least, you listen to her and you were like, okay, well, I can understand why she's surging. I can understand why, she's got the pole position, right? Like, you can understand those things too. And so I think she came out. I think she definitely comes out. Again, I don't know how much momentum anyone comes out of this first debate, but she definitely comes in reinforced as, okay, I can understand why. And I was thinking about this the other day too. Look, for all the women candidates, but I think especially her, there is this question of electability, right? Because again, some people in very stereotypical paper book fashion will say, well, here's a talented woman, a talented older woman, but we just lost that 4 years ago. He just beat, 45 just beat that kind of woman 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Do we really want another person like that?
Yeah.
And I have to say, you listen to Elizabeth Warren, and I'm like, you know what? I'm cool with that. I'm cool, and like I'm good with that. I'm
you're in her wheelhouse. You're a highly educated coastal elite. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
you know what I'm saying? Would you go to Fieldston or something? But
of course, they were talking about moving the party away from Ivy League folks, and I was like, look, I just got in. What are you talking about?
Like, come on, dog. God, Tim Ryan. It's so funny with Tim Ryan. He goes home on imagine Tim Ryan on the weekends with these white boys in Youngstown, Ohio, drinking Miller Lights and shit. And like, really, Tim? You're a Democrat? I mean, you mess with these people, dog. Like,
But you know what? But this, I thought that was, and I don't know.
Tim, you really want all these Mexicans here, Tim? That's really what you think, Tim? I mean,
but the thing is, like, they didn't shy away from the working class, right? I think that was interesting, and I don't think they necessarily connected with that, but you have to almost appreciate where we are in 2020.
Points. He's not making bad points, but the bottom line is, if somebody had the chutzpah to say, because really this is the issue, and Stephanie Martin Yanes brought this up on social media. I got to give Stephanie props because she articulated better. I'm going to articulate it. But basically is that, the other side's real clear. They spew the hatred. They're real straight up about their agenda. We talk policy. We talk around it. The issue here is that Tim's right? On some level, Tim's right? Yeah, the Midwest, and, part of it's an elite thing, an educated thing. We look down on these people. NAFTA was messed up for them. We understand it. But the issue is that as long as he sees it as an us or a thing, his people are still not going to connect with the larger Democratic Party. And so when you sort of, this is indirecta that working class is white people, and that also implies that Black and Latinos and people that live not in urban, in most of America, which is urban America, on the coast, is that on some level, like, we're the takers, or we're not them. So I think, he's a white guy. He's not good at talking about race. Big shocker. But I think he's not really, and nobody really is getting at the bigger issue. I think, there's opportunities for others to do this. Again, it was the first debate. They had very little time. But that's really the issue, because if it's an us, it's us, we're the party. No, you're the party. If someone like him, if Klobuchar or Buttigieg won, why should we get excited if this is a sort of an identity battle for the party, not a common vision?
I think when it's interesting, because I think you're right. A lot of people are trying, and again, we saw this post 2016 where it was like the blue collar equals white, right? Blue collar working like that. But the reality is that when I think of working class, I think of my parents, right? When I think of working class, I think of your parents. I think of a bunch of other folks, right? Folks of color, right? I think the problem is being able to state that, right? And I think that's the one thing when we talk about the connection, is that there was a lot of talk about the working class and a lot of talk about people affording that. But I think you're right. There wasn't a direct saying, hey, we are all actually, there's a lot more that are being shut out the door in terms of this economy, right?
Well,
I thought Elizabeth Warren started out, talking about it.
But I think, and this is kind of like Stephanie's point, and again, I'm stealing it, but I agree with her, is that
got to get Stephanie on.
Absolutely. Democrat, none of these people have the guts, because they're just not gonna have the guts to really say it in the way the Trump the way Trump would have the guts to say it, which is saying something to the effect of, basically what I said is that white folks in the Midwest, if you keep thinking that, that the Dominican in Providence, Rhode Island, who has the same job you got, isn't his America, this isn't going to work. Because your criticism of us is that we forgot you. This got to work both ways. And I think people have to say, like, yeah, I understand.
People gotta, and
a minority has to say, yeah, I can understand a white person in the middle of the Midwest not understanding this conversation about immigration. They don't understand it, and they can see why. Wow, we're talking so much about immigration. I just think there has to be a more blunt way of talking about it. It's not what they're saying; it's how they're saying it. And I think that's what Tim Ryan was trying to say in a clunky way, but he's still coming at it from that lens that, like, which is fucked up. Which is like basically the working class white person is more important on some level, or on some level needs, because that's the reality is, if you look at the data sets, that's not the case. Let's get into who do you think, LB, was the biggest loser tonight?
Who's the biggest loser?
I got two names. Somebody gonna like this one. Well, let me throw it out. I think, look, in terms of people someone that's an accomplished U.S. senator that has an attractive profile in a normal world would have a very attractive profile for President of the United States. I think Amy Klobuchar, our senator from Minnesota, just is coming real flat. I just, to me, when people like Julian Castro and people like, even Beto and even Delaney, to me, on some level, showed a little more engagement, I think Amy's got a long way to go. And I'm not saying this because I have an ideological beef with her. I don't have a problem with her pushing a more moderate, practical lane. I think that's okay. I think we need that balance in this conversation, because we do need a fair exchange of ideas, and being moderate sometimes isn't wrong. It's not that. But
so where do you think she could have? Yeah. Where do you think she came out particularly flat? Right. I don't necessarily disagree. I don't necessarily disagree. I don't think she came out necessarily any more flatter than.
I think she just came off like everything was like playing off them. Like, well, I'm not going to sell you a bill of goods. I'm not, but inherently that's playing off Warren and playing off really, kind of the progressive wing, right? Where you should just talk about your vision, and then anything to, and they got into that regional, very much like, for you to say, well, I can be, she said this more than once, like, I can beat Trump because I'm white from Minnesota. That's basically what you're saying. I'm from the Midwest.
And a former prosecutor too, and a former prosecutor.
No, and well, yeah, and then Rachel, and then they also, it was the roll of the dice with the questions. They set her up with a question that obviously not going to. Why should a Black and Latino care about you? It's a good, great question, but obviously and then her answer is, because I'm about, I'm about a very political answer. Not a bad answer, but it's just not gonna convince.
It's not gonna fly in 2020.
It's not gonna fly, because the reality is you gotta be like, yeah, I'm a white girl. Yeah, I don't know a lot of minorities, but guess what? What we're about, and she never talks about the Somalis in Minnesota. There's diversity in Minnesota. Talk about the work you've done.
There's a lot of diversity.
Color and the refugee. I'm sure there was things you could reference, and it just isn't. It wasn't connected. And it wasn't just that, even her foreign policy stuff, she's got some gravitas in this subject, and just nothing like it there was no heart into it. It's just no heart. And then it's the irony, because I wrote this down, that when she talked about the first 100 days, I think it was in that kind of, what are you going to do for minorities thing? She talked about voting rights issues and talked about criminal justice reform. Great answers. But you got to communicate that in a way that's going to make people understand that while this person's got my back, or would have my back amongst others. And I think that's what's giving Warren, outside of, I got a plan for that. I think Warren's showing that she's connecting, maybe not with everyone on that emotional, visceral level, but like, as someone she's going to do her thing. She's going to fight for us. And I think she's the biggest winner to me of the night with Julian, as much for what she did for the last week leading up to the debate as the debate tonight. The debate tonight, she was fine. But to me, the fact that everywhere I turn, Warren's leading. She's the first one to say impeach the guy. She's the first one that went to Homestead herself. She's the first one talking about, student loans, or, kind of taking that bold stand. And the fact that at the very least she's taking these stands from a policy perspective, putting herself out there, I think says something. And there's a lot of times where people are kind of a half step behind on her. And I think that matters. I mean, it's a small point. And I think, honestly, it affected her debate performance. Because I think if she hadn't gone to Homestead Day in that heat, she would have been had a little more zip in her step tonight, frankly. Because she's not a young girl. But she went and Bernie Sanders' wife went, right? It always just seems like she's like a half step ahead of everyone as it taking a stand and taking leadership. And I think that's what's putting her on this trajectory at the moment.
Well, I definitely think that Senator, I think you're right in that Senator Klobuchar didn't show, didn't show a spark, right? Didn't show much of a spark.
Dude,
even Tulsi, I think showed a little bit of a.
Really?
No, I mean, she got into that debate. When she got into that debate about like,
Ryan,
I think she was with Lay about
Iraq.
Right.
Yeah. She was.
I might not have agreed with what she was saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I might not have agreed with what she was saying, but at least that there was she showed that she was.
That was her moment. In La Última Hora, she had a moment. Yeah, the last 50 minutes of the debate. I think who was the biggest loser for you?
Loser is probably. I think I have in terms of expectations, right? I think the problem is I expected more out of Booker. I expected more out of Booker.
Ding, ding, ding.
So I would say in terms of you have to talk about a loser.
I wrote Klobuchar and Booker. Yeah. Booker, talk to me. I got thoughts on it.
Well, and again, I think I'm not. It's not that he.
It's
lost
okay.
anything,
We all love Booker. This isn't personal, Bob. We all know Corey's the
but this is the thing.
Brother. We all love Corey. That's not the issue.
No, and this is the thing. He had some good sound bites. He had some good parts where he looked like he was like on the edge of getting excited, right? But it's like it was like he needed a double, and he kept on slapping singles. Right, like that to me, you had a runner in scoring position. Bring him home. You're in the number. You're batting 4th and 5th, right? Like you're in the middle of the heart of the order, and you're giving me singles, and you gain the man to 3rd, right?
And let me tell you. I didn't realize this till recently. That him and Rachel Maddow are real tight. I don't know if you knew. They went to Stanford together. They're real close. And Rachel gave him, to the point where if I was one of the minor candidates, I would definitely complain because the questions were definitely not.
Oh, he has set up. I think he was set up. I mean, I think there were certain questions where
I think if anyone was set up tonight for success, Julian to some degree, because he got a lot of questions if you think about it. But if anyone was set up for success tonight was Booker. That's what I'm saying. Is they kind of saw him as the number 2 he was the B side of the fight. Closely with Beto, and I think Booker fell flat. He just didn't. Of course, we know he's about the right things. I think. Frankly, for Blacks and Latinos, he probably would be as good a president as anybody because I think he'd actually focus on our issues, particularly criminal justice reform and poverty issues and the gun stuff. So I'm not saying I think the guy would be a good president, but I just think in terms of someone who has the talent going to expectations, this guy has is an incredible political talent and has the potential to really inspire this country. Backed up with policy. Everyone knows, if you know Corey, he's a policy geek, and his former policy guy, Leo Cruz, is watching this. And we know, I mean, Corey is as thoughtful a person as we have in federal government in this country. That being said, a lot of talent, a lot of good sound bites, but is the vision there? And I think, frankly, Corey sometimes, how do I say this? I think Corey sometimes pigeonholes himself too much as a black candidate in this context, because I don't think Corey needs to do that. I'm not saying he shouldn't bring up black issues. I appreciate the fact that he brings up issues as specific black issues more than like Obama did and like other candidates do. So don't get me wrong. I just think that he's not projecting to me the whole package. It's like you said. It's like he's got the potential to hit the homers. He's hitting a lot of good singles. Wow, that ball's lined through the field. But it just isn't. It isn't as well rounded with I think the more inspirational talent that he has. I think he could be doing better on both fronts in terms of articulating a coherent vision and also being more inspirational. And it's there. You could see it. Maybe it'll be there in October, but it's not there yet. At least after the first debate.
Yeah, and when I think about in terms of people who are not taking. Look, at the end of the day, today is June 26th. The financials are due at the end of the month or maybe at the end of the quarter.
That's gonna be big.
If I'm thinking, who is it that gets a bump because the fundraising email gets sent out tonight?
Julian.
Right? And who is it? I think
Julian
gets it.
You know what, for Latinos, and again, I'm not endorsing Julian.
No.
I don't know if he really should be president of the United States, frankly. I mean, one the truth. I mean, that's a little, to me, it's a little bit of a thin resume. That's why someone like a Klobuchar, I'd be banging my head against the wall. It's like she's, like an Inslee. That's another conversation. We'll talk about the B-siders in a second. The C level, the people that perform at 8:15 at the festival. But Latinos, we need to give Julian some money before July 1st. Because he deserves to do this. Whether he finishes 7th.
He deserves to be in the next one. I mean, honestly, that's the thing. He does deserve to be in the next one.
I'm talking about he'll be in Detroit already. But he needs to be in the fall. He needs to be.
That's what I'm saying.
He needs to get delegates out of this process.
Yeah.
Who deserves it. Because this is how good he is now. So I'm going to give him money. When we get on, I'm going to give him some money because he deserves it. He deserves it. To that point, is Booker going to get a lot of money tonight? I don't know, bro.
I don't. Based on today's performance, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like I'm just saying, like just in terms of based on the performance today, I don't see the bump coming out. Now he has some good sound bites, and so if you're good, if his fundraising people are good, they're gonna snap those good sound bites and they'll send it away, and they'll be able to manufacture some stuff. But again, I mean, you were talking about Rachel Maddow, kind of being a little easy on him. He's been criticized
a few times. She jumped up. I mean, she tried to. Him and Beto definitely got more questions than they deserved, in terms of the balance. You know what I'm saying?
No, I think, I think those candidates at the end of the day, look, I think Booker is going to be fine. I think Booker is going to be, Booker will do better. I think, Booker's also, I also just wonder whether or not Booker would do, whether Booker does better in a smaller field, right? And so, 10 people are a lot of people.
Right. I think you're right.
I think, if there was 3 or 4 people.
Almost theatrical and very sound biting. And that's why de Blasio, when he had his time, and they didn't give him a lot of time, but when he had his time, did well. I thought he did very well, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You could argue if the night could have played out, I almost feel like de Blasio. First of all, I'm sure he's going to complain about not getting enough questions and all that, which I think is fair. To be honest, I think it's fair. If you're going to put him on the stage, give him the same amount of questions. I thought, I feel bad for, I don't love these people, but I feel bad for Delaney. I don't like Gabbard a little bit, and I feel bad for her because I didn't think she got. To me, you got to ask them at least make it close, even though they literally gave Elizabeth the second hour off. Let's talk briefly because we got to let's talk about the rest of the field briefly. So we talked about de Blasio. Well, let's start with de Blasio. I almost feel like this night could have played out where he could have really shined. I think he shined a little bit, but was it he just didn't have enough time, or I almost feel like there was just a few opportunities that maybe he just didn't have enough time, because I think when he spoke, I thought he did well, and I think he was much more telegenic than I imagined him to be.
Well, I will say this as someone who had very low expectations of de Blasio coming in. I was like, maybe he should be in the next one. Honestly, I was, and I'm harsh on him, but I was like, you know what? He added something to it.
You know what? You know what he's, and that's una indirecta Cory Booker on.
Oh my God, about the family.
Oh, Dios. El único
my
aquí
God.
con un
You
hijo
heard that
negro.
too, right?
Seguro, that's un puño a Cory, big time. Yo soy el único aquí con un hijo negro, afroamericano, y una mujer negra. I was like, whoa, dog.
Yo, that was some Northeast New York below the belt type of joint.
That's Brooklyn, Newark shit right there, dog.
Yeah.
That's all that was about. And we don't even go on the levels because it's not even cool to talk about that. But all right, so de Blasio, I agree. I'm surprised to say this, but de Blasio. Let's get into the rest of them. You have any thoughts on Tim Ryan? He looked overwhelmed.
I think
the first half hour, but I give him credit. He woke up a little bit.
I think he woke up a little bit. And I actually like Tim Ryan a lot. I think also Tim Ryan's one of those people that, like, to be quite honest, I kind of really hadn't really seen him in person. I really read more about him and heard him on radio.
I didn't think he was that big a guy. That was interesting.
Yeah.
He's a big guy.
And so I don't think I would have been fine listening to him, right? Like, not necessarily seeing him. So I think he has some good ideas, but I don't think.
What are you talking about?
I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, like,
there's Puerto Ricans in Youngstown, guy.
No, I'm just saying, like, he didn't. I mean, he could do better. Why don't we say this? Like,
Yeah, I would say, you know what? I don't want to like him, but
I mean, this was the guy. This was the guy that wasn't
we
the guy
need
that challenged. He didn't challenge Pelosi. Isn't he challenged like Pelosi for
he's the one that
leadership or something?
challenges Pelosi, but then
That's
he
what
don't
I'm
run. Then he
saying.
want to run March the Fudge to do it. It's like, dog, if
Right.
that's your fight, jump in. Him and
But
Seth
that's why
Moulton.
I'm surprised.
That was my issue with them.
But that's why I was surprised that he was a little shook, right? Because it's not like this is a guy that doesn't know the spotlight and doesn't know it, right? So
thing makes a difference. First of all, it's the first one. It's the first. Second of all, I'm sorry. That John is in Cleveland, or I think the Miami thing threw him off.
I was going to say, I was going to ask you, like, do you think that the Miami thing threw him off?
About this. We got to talk about the Spanish stuff. After we get to these minor we got to get ready, Lola. But I think the whole thing with Miami and Diaz Balart asking Spanish questions and the whole vibe and imagine what he saw in Miami all week. It just, I think, threw him off. It's not his vibe. But
I'm okay. So Tim didn't really do much, like in terms of like trying to like again fundraising. If you're the
like a good
fundraiser
congressman, and I think he's going to feel like he did good, and he should. But he's a congressman. That's what he is. He's not a president.
Now, I will say this guy from Maryland, what's his name?
John Delaney. Falta respeto, man. Hating on Delaney.
Delaney? I thought Delaney had some good quips in. I thought
he had the quote of the night. Hold on, I wrote it down. Hold on. Delaney, another guy who has a right to complain, like, oh, he could have gave me a little more time. I thought Delaney did a good job. Fix what's wrong, keep what's good. That whole bit about the healthcare, like, don't create the socialism. I thought it was I agree with it totally, but it's a compelling argument. I thought Delaney did well.
There were times that he came off as an adult in the room. So I thought that was a good thing for him. And as somebody who honestly probably doesn't have a national profile outside. I don't even know how much of a profile he has even in Maryland. So
you don't even know who he was.
Right. So exactly. So I think that he came across as saying, interesting.
Inslee, my man, Inslee, another guy that's got to be very frustrated. But Inslee to me is the Bill Richardson of this cycle. Bill Richardson in 2008, people don't realize this. The guy who had the best resume in 2008 was Bill Richardson. And we don't have time to get into his resume, but the point is, Inslee, as he said a few times, is an accomplished governor that's done woke things, that's done standard democratic things. And I think the climate thing, his climate change perspective, I think is on the money. We don't have a planet. You don't got nothing else. So I think the fact that with Inslee, the problem is he's going to run out of time because I don't think he's going to raise much money after today. And, if he I don't know if he gets to the fall because he just didn't have enough time. I almost feel bad critiquing him because he didn't have so little time. But I like Jay. I did reach out to our Washington State correspondent, LB, Leo Perales, and he sort of felt the same way. I texted him at one point. I said, Leo, does Rachel Maddow know Jay Inslee's in the building? And he started laughing. He goes, yeah, that's what we're all saying out here, man. Give Jay a chance. But anyway. But
he seemed to be very intense. Didn't you think he seemed to be very intense? I'd never seen him really on national things. So
yeah, well, I had texted you and Michael, my brother Michael Gugliasso, at one point that Jay Inslee looks like an SEC college football coach. He does. He's about to run out with the team out of the tunnel. Yeah, no.
But I like. But you know what?
It was that first debate jitters, dog. That was big lights, dog. There were a lot of shook people on that stage.
Well, I will say this, and in general, if people thought that this was the folks coming off the bench, right? Like if tomorrow's debate is the first, is the starting five, and this is when. Then I like the start. I like the bench. I think we got a good bench. There's a bunch of folks who are fighters, who are folks who are eloquent around the issues. I could totally see a couple of folks as secretaries. Yeah, and like if they didn't win, being tapped as a secretary here, EPA there, HHS. I totally in terms of seeing those folks there. And so I think, again, this is my personal belief that at the end of the day, when the party is talking about what do we do in 2020. It's not about, because it can't be about just Trump. It's got to be about, what his government and who are the people that have been in there messing up. And I think part of the thing that the Democrats, I think did show tonight is that you've got some really talented people who could head some of these agencies and do some good, right? I mean, I think you're trying to find out who's going to be the top manager, who's going to be the CEO.
Future senators, or future.
Yeah. I mean, definitely
absolutely.
these are folks there in terms of there. And I think, again, my frustration with the Democratic Party and Tom Perez sometimes is that, like, you got to run two races here. You got to run a race for the presidency, but you also have to make a bid in this day and age to tell people why your brand should be in charge of the whole kit and caboodle. And they're not doing that, right? And I think these debates are a real good opportunity to be like, hey, we like Jay Inslee. Jay Inslee is an accomplished governor. He could easily be president. We may decide among us, but he's got a good. I mean, let's just kind of break down the check boxes. Governor, he's passed laws. He said himself passed something around climate change, right?
Healthcare, minimum wage, climate change, refugee. He's been good with the immigration stuff.
And let's be real, a lot of white working class folks in Washington.
Hello, the Apple State.
So. Again, I mean,
he's a good guy. I like him. He got so little time. It's tough. And I think, him and Delaney and de Blasio at some point just held back. Like, there's only so much I can do. But, like, and that's not Ryan's style. But, like, they weren't able to show their best because they had to kind of, like, butt in to get attention. Quickly, Tulsi Gabbard, LB. Any thoughts?
She's got a hard thing coming in. I think most people would agree that she shouldn't, I think some people believe that because of her positions, she shouldn't even be on the stage. I think, honestly, right? So I think, considering that, I think she did a good job. I think considering that, I mean, she had a couple of things in there. I think she did show, I think she showed grit. And I think that's what, and authenticity, and the truth of the matter is that that's what voters want.
Going back to Klobuchar, that's Klobuchar's thing is grit. So you didn't even find Klobuchar.
I don't know. Klobuchar didn't show much grit. I don't know. Maybe she was trying to eat some grit.
Tulsi's moment was picking on Ryan, which I thought was fantastic. Which seems like an extension of a cafeteria fight in the mess hall. That was fantastic. Let's talk about Spanish. I wanted to. I forgot to do it, but. I did want to put out there a sort of over and under of 3.5 to see how many of the candidates would say something in Spanish, and actually it would have been under because I think it was only 3. But LB, when you saw Beto begin his opening statement in Spanish and the look on Booker and Warren's faces, what were you thinking, brother? That was quite a moment. Got to give Beto a little props for that.
You forget. I mean, I gave him props. I mean, he got brownie points in terms of that kind of way. Again, I think I think he's got. I mean, I think all these candidates got to think of themselves as, like, especially for the first one. What do you do? What's your goal? What's your joint? And I think the thing is that Beto, at the end of the day, he wanted to make. I think he needed to make the case that in a place like Miami, that he is just as much a Latino candidate as Julian Castro or anybody else, any other folks of color.
Definitely right? A base play. I saw, well-intentioned Democrats, progressive white folks on Facebook like, what's all the Spanish about? And I think they say that innocently, So, it's a base play because I don't know, there's certain people that doesn't click with. I thought the Booker Warren reaction was priceless, and then Booker jumped in with the Spanish. And got a lot of critiques on social media about his flow. I've heard it was not his best Spanish speaking day. I've heard him speak Spanish much more. I think what happened was what I put on social media was, if you heard, and you're very much a linguist, LB, is that we know Newark, New Jersey. People don't know Newark, New Jersey, large Portuguese speaking population, the Portuguese, Brasilero. So I think his Spanish and his Portuguese got twisted.
But that was okay in Miami. But that was okay in Miami because we got a bunch of folks. You got some
whole country's watching, LB. I just want you to be well aware of that. I know you're on the block from the event, but I can imagine what Chicana San Diego is thinking. Is my point.
Well, Chicana San Diego, I'm not sure if the Chicana San Diego's been to Miami, so I mean that in itself would be a culture shock.
She got on the cruise. She went to the Bahamas. Come on, she's been to Miami, but then she had that Dominican boyfriend in 2016.
That is if he's still living.
But my point is this: another example where Booker copied, he was the other one that spoke Spanish. And he didn't do it as well. It was just another clunky moment. And then, you know what? I'm glad Julian didn't put it in too early. He threw it in strategically toward the end. Then he threw it in with the adios. Again, I thought the use of language was very interesting. LB, you did a great job for us. You went the extra mile because, of course, it was being broadcast on Telemundo, so you watched some of the coverage on the Spanish side.
It was really interesting.
Give me your observations on that.
So again, and I didn't get a chance to listen to, like, obviously we're doing the post debate now, so I don't see in terms of what the post debate in Telemundo. But what I thought was really interesting, and I never really had thought about this, right? But like, they're doing simultaneous translations, and they've got to find people who, you have a multitude of different people who are actually translating.
So each one had their own interpreter.
It sounded like each one had a particular interpreter, or at least there were like 5 or 6, and they would switch off. But what's interesting though is that, like, the voices. So, for example, the person who was translating for Warren sounded very much like a very young woman, right? The person who was doing it for Klobuchar sounded like an older woman.
Interesting,
right? And again, someone who was Beto's was a very much like. Beto and Julian were very much like older men, right? So again, I just thought it was interesting. It'd be interesting to see tomorrow, like, who voices Bernie, right? Because I don't know if that was like just so happenstance.
Un tigre, brother. Un tigre.
Right.
Actually, I like that. So, what kind of Latino would you want to be your voice?
Oh man, that sounds like that. Oh, like that sounds like in of itself, like almost like a good app, right? Like if you had an app, you just
no. The best would be if Andrew Yang picked a Chinese Cuban. Sorry, Chico.
This is where we get in trouble. No.
That, what, but how was
that was really interesting. But I'm just saying, like, that's really interesting because I think, when it comes
that does give a different flavor,
And I think it's worth. I mean, I think we have to give that tip over to the folks at Julio Varela and the folks at Latino USA to see maybe if they could follow up. Their great journalistic chops, because it's a really good point. Because if Latinos are really trying to hear what the candidates are saying through them, right? What are they actually saying? And this is different than, for example, having spokespeople, right? Because obviously, if you're talking about Trump, here in Florida, you're going to get the lieutenant governor, right? Jeanette Nunez, right? Who's Cuban, and she's going to talk for him. And so in some ways, people are going to listen to the Trump message through those people, but they're doing it through real people, right? As opposed to, like, in the translation, it's almost, it's potentially playing on what people think is, what do people think as, like, what's used for, or playing against that?
You got a smooth younger woman's voice. Yeah, no, it makes a difference. How did they handle when Beto spoke Spanish?
It was crazy because she started to, like, talk in Spanish, and then she was like the person, because I think a woman was speaking before Beto, so that person was, like, literally kind of flowing in, and then the guy was gonna speak, and then he got kind of cut himself off. It's almost as if someone was like, "Hey, wait a minute, I don't need to repeat Spanish. He's saying Spanish." And even me listening to it, I was like, wait a minute. I'm not hearing the translator. I'm hearing him. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so that to me,
it may have been more impactful on the English language side than the Spanish, because maybe it may not occur to the Spanish language people immediately that he was actually speaking Spanish.
Right. But what was interesting, but what also is interesting is because then you get to actually hear Beto's voice first.
Yes.
Right? As opposed to a translator's voice first, right? And again, I don't know if this is as people thinking about this, but I'm like, shoot, that was a good point.
Absolutely. And this is where Beto, he has his moments, right? So, like, and the other thing is, like, Beto's like an El Paso guy. Like, and I think about my homie Cristobal that's working on the Biden campaign. Like, he sounds like an El Paso Latino guy when he's talking. And Texas Latino, that resonates. So the fact that he's able to get, not just he speaks Spanish, but he's speaking Southwest Spanish in that sense, I think is it's endearing. It's endearing. There's no question about it. LB, anything else about the environment? I didn't realize that venue was that small. I thought it was gonna be a bigger place. And there was a lot of conversation about, who got tickets. It was small. It felt like it. What do you think about the environment there that impacted the conversation?
I mean, it's not that small. I mean, I
thought it'd be more. It wasn't 10,000 people up in there. I mean, was it 3,000, couple thousand?
No, but when is the debate ever that many people anyway? I mean, think about it. I mean,
put it in a bigger spot. I don't know. I just expected.
You ain't doing debates up in Madison Square Garden. I mean, like, this ain't fighting now. You get more people to fight.
By the way, I mean, Democrats. I mean, you got to endear that excitement. They could have put. It could have been in a 10,000 seater. I mean, the campaign
and the truth of the matter is that if you did, you'd have a lot of people funding it. Look, there was a lot of discussion certainly here in Miami about kind of the party, who was actually going to go, and then certainly it seemed like at the last minute or in the last week or so, the party definitely listened. Now, some people would say, "Oh, we were already planning on doing that anyway." But there were people who got tickets that didn't have tickets a week ago, right? And so, and they.
My DC heads. I mean, there was a lot of drama with that, no doubt, no question about it. And then also with the hotels, because you got all the candidates had to get their block of rooms for their campaigns. There was a lot going on. There's not a lot going on. LB, as we wrap this up, any final thoughts about tonight? Then we'll talk a little bit about what we expect for tomorrow.
Again, I'll go. I think there's three things that kind of jump out to me about tonight's thing, right? I think tonight's debate. I think the first is that, look, I was actually real impressed, even though the connections weren't there, that folks were talking about working class folks and situations and issues that were affecting people's pocketbook. People being able to afford healthcare, people being able to afford that. I wish more housing was discussed, and I wish more climate change was discussed.
Absolutely.
But at least they were trying to get there, right? And so I think that was compared to 4 years ago or even 8 years ago.
Well, they were trying to get to a climate change. Housing really got short shifted tonight.
Yeah, I mean, housing. I mean, and in Miami, that's the thing. The other thing that I thought that they could have easily had.
And in Miami, no Venezuela también. Another one.
They didn't talk about Venezuela. And the other thing they didn't also do, which I think they could have, I think a candidate could have done but didn't, was there was Chuck Todd talks about parkland and guns, right? But literally 5 minutes away is like Overtown and Liberty City, African American neighborhoods, right? Where folks are getting shot also daily as well, right? No one made that connection. Or at least I didn't hear that connection.
A few people brought it up, but I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
Like it just,
you're not connecting the dots. It was more about basically and it's also about the questions, because I think they did a disservice on those questions, because basically the argument Chuck always brings up, and I like Chuck, he's a good guy, but he does a good job. But that his whole thing was basically, and he asked this question a few different ways to a few different people. What are you going to tell white men about you're going to take their guns, Democrats? Like, I mean, we have to address that more head on than we are. But the fact that that's the frame, again, it's like it's through a white man's swing voter lens, this whole conversation, when in fact, that's not the Democratic Party. This is general election is different. Democratic Party is about minorities and people in urban areas and progressive people. So, so we got to be real about who the audience is for this conversation. Well, it always can't be about the disgruntled white man one way, Right.
And I have to say that in some ways, listening to this debate makes me want to go back to some of those debates that have been happening, like in South Carolina, the ones that She the People have been organizing, those kind of things.
I'll be organizing one in the month as well, by the way.
So I mean, I'm just thinking, because I think those questions have a lot more, have a little more graphics. But I thought that at least the working class thing was good. I think that definitely the bench overall seemed good. While some people were flat and some people were not, I think overall the quality of the candidates.
Yeah. Nobody looked like a clown. Even de Blasio. Nobody looked like a clown.
And I know a lot of people
look too much like politicians, but they are politicians. So.
But they are. But and I know that some people have been questioning and I'm being one of them. Why the hell do you have 20 people, 22 people, whatever? But I came across today saying, you know what? All right, let's do this, right? It's democracy, F it, right? And I appreciated, having, at least the discussion. Because people have to answer these questions, right? And that staffs then has to prepare and research, right? And people have to do. And so in terms of the overall apparatus that is the campaign and coverage and things like that, then it actually is a pretty good thing. It's part of us, I think, as folks of color who are professionals, who are organizers, who are people who work the system, to then take advantage of these moments, right? These moments that people are doing.
Well, I'm glad all these campaigns are out there, because I want all my people to get paid to work on them. So I'm good with that. I will say this, and then we'll get into what we're thinking about for tomorrow, is that I forget my train of thought, but the bottom line is that it was the first night, and there's a lot that we need to discuss. All I did want to mention was, to that point, as it relates to sort of who's the audience, is that not nearly enough education, and really not enough from a millennial younger person perspective, which which is half the Latino electorate and a big chunk potentially, if we mobilize correctly, of the Democratic base. Elbert, quickly, tomorrow night, what are you expecting? What are you excited about? Who are you looking out for? Talk to me, brother.
Well, this is it. Like if today was the opening act, tomorrow's the people see it as the main show. I'm definitely looking. I'm looking to see. I'm looking at a couple of things, right? I'm looking to see does Bernie have it again, right? Does Bernie have it again on the stage? On the stage, right? At the end of the day, all this stuff. But does he have it again? Like because running twice is hard. Right, like being the candidate again, and let's be real, Hillary won the last time before. Many people think that he should have been the candidate anyway, right? So just in terms of as a virtual presence, is he there to take us to the promised land, right? I mean, that I think is the question. I think in terms of who I'm really wanting to have a really good show of force, I want Kamala Harris to have a good night.
You know what? That's what I wrote down. I think in particular, because of thinking about this Miami frame, this Latino diverse immigration frame, and thinking about how, quite honestly, Booker just did okay. Nothing didn't. I think they almost feel like on some level they kind of wanted him to kind of be the story, and Julian ended up being the story. And now you're talking about, and as I think about it, you're not gonna have anyone on stage speaking Spanish. I mean, Yang may throw it in or something, but you don't got nobody that's that comfortable with the immigration stuff the way even Booker and Beto and Julian are. You're gonna have a very white guy heavy top list of, and Harris has an opportunity to take a moral have moral high ground on civil rights issues, potentially even immigration because of California. Yeah. And her civil, and being a champion of civil rights, right, as a black Asian woman. But she's got to take that ring, brother. She's got to take advantage of this opportunity because Klobuchar and Booker didn't tonight. So I think you're absolutely right about that. The other thing is Mayor Pete had a rough week. I think he's reeling. And again, Mayor Pete in Miami, that diversity piece, so he's gonna have to figure out a way to talk about those issues. It'll be so fat. The immigration debate tomorrow is gonna be really interesting, really, because you got people, nobody here, even Harris, it's not their thing, and I could see where Sanders feels he has a good opportunity. The other thing is that in terms of the B-siders, I mean, I don't think anyone, I think everyone comported themselves well tonight as like at least a legit person. I got a feeling one or two of these people tomorrow are going to look short. Hickenlooper, Swalwell, potentially. I think even Gillibrand. Your girl Gillibrand is on the ropes, my man. So what do you think about any of the B people who you're looking for? Well, talk to me about Mayor Pete. Talk to me about Mayor Pete. Mayor Pete is in an interesting spot right now.
Pete's in an interesting spot because I think Pete comes in a little bit like, lack of a better term, like a poor man's Beto, right? Like in terms of like media.
Whereas he looked like a rich man's Beto 10 days ago. Right. He looked like the guy that could draw that generational contrast. Now he's reeling. He has to play defense as it relates to race and basically minority issues, diversity issues, when he didn't need to do that 10 days. He could have been on the offense if this debate took 2 weeks ago.
But I think, and it's what happens when you run for, it's what happens when you run for office as a mayor, right? I mean, at the end of the day, right? And not a mayor of a big city like New York or Philadelphia or whatever, but as a mayor of South Bend, right? I think, again, Pete has the potential. Is he going to be more Amy Klobuchar, or is he going to be, like De Blasio or even Julian, right? Like like where does he stand in terms of tomorrow? I think if he's gotten the question, I mean, I don't know. I mean, because I'll be quite honest. I think I've seen him do well on TV. I've also seen him do badly. So the question is, like, which Mayor Pete will we see tomorrow?
And I think to your point earlier, and I'm glad you brought up Bernie. Bernie has an opportunity. Thinking about this Booker dynamic right from today. Bernie has an opportunity to look like the woke candidate tomorrow night. He does, even with Harris, because Harris, I mean, she's right on the issues, but in service of someone because of his staff, because of he won't be afraid to say certain things. So does he have the courage to kind of go there on some things? He's going to hit Biden on the civil rights piece. So I think Sanders, the more I think about it, I think you're right. I think Sanders and Harris, they both have opportunities. And I think if Sanders trumps Harris on the civil rights piece, that would not be a good look for her. But anyone on the B side, brother, you're thinking about? Any of the B players? I got some thoughts on it, but I need to hear from you, brother.
I think Gillibrand has got to make an. Gillibrand has.
She ain't showing much, dog. I don't know what's going on with her. Talk to me.
But she's this is the thing. Like she's a good cat. I mean, she's a good candidate, right? Like
I thought she was going to do better at this point, but it's early. But she don't have much. She don't have much time.
But look, at the end of the day, let's also be real. It's hard for some of these other candidates who are like governors and stuff on the national level, right? Here, yes, granted, she's the senator from New York. It's true. But the truth of the matter is that like if there's anyone who if people will write you off if they don't know you, and let's be real, they write you off if you're a woman candidate, right? And so I just think that she's I don't think she's had an opportunity to really like be in the same room in terms of hanging out with folks until they're in the conversation, because most people aren't thinking of her in the conversation. So in terms of people tomorrow going in, I think she has the most to gain. If she has a couple of moments like Congressman, what's his again, Maryland guy, DeLay? Is that
Delaney? Like
because it's not Delaney. Because DeLay was yeah. So if she's got a couple of moments like Delaney's had, I think she's going to come up with
Julian had. That's right. Really the issue.
But I don't even think she has to have a Julian moment. Right? I think if she even has just a Delaney moment, a couple of Delaney moments, I think that'll boost her, right? Because I think she's one of those people where people are like, why? Or even like de Blasio, because people are like, why should you even be in the room?
Why you're running?
Yes, you're a good senator. But why are you even running?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Because in a different way, that progressives and Democrats, some Democrats don't trust Tulsi. It's the same thing right now. You're a moderate congresswoman. Now you're supposed to be woke. And then people of color, and it seems like she's trying too hard to be woke. And it's like, well, you're still a suburban white woman. You can't lead us. And there's a lot of different. But then you're not really the progressive candidate either. But then she hasn't found her lane. She hasn't found her lane. The women thing solely being the suburban white mom ain't the lane yet.
Well, the thing is that I think in the Senate, she has made a name or attempted to make a name as certainly someone who has stood up for, women's rights and trying to lead on that issue. She gave, she was the one in some ways that was the big, the big push to get Senator Franken, to resign.
Yeah, she shanked that dog, that man.
Yeah.
Let's say she was wrong, but she shanked the dog.
No, but you know what I'm saying. So I think that's the thing. I think
Marcy Project style.
She got grit. It's not that. It's just that we haven't seen that. So again, I think if we see that, then people will be like, okay, she deserves to be in the conversation.
I just have no idea if she's gonna do it. Yeah, she has a shot.
But honestly, I think she's one of those kind of people that if she has a bad night tomorrow, or she doesn't have if she fumbles or whatever, then people are gonna be like, you got to go back to New York.
This is my prediction on my B-siders. You heard it here first. Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson is the only candidate out in this mix that's going to say it the way it needs to be said. I'm going to tell you that right now. None of y'all know who Marianne Williamson is, but if they give her the chance, and I don't know if they want to give her the chance, they're going to shut her up because she's going to say things. She's the only one in this race that's blunt enough to say it the way that it needs to be said to penetrate the consciousness of people in these conversations. This woman knows how to communicate. This woman has nothing to lose. And I'm telling you right now, my man Yang, I got a soft spot. I'm part Yang gang. I'm going to tell you. That's my man right there, dog. And I'm not saying I support him, but I love the way he approaches things. I love his thoughtfulness. I love his approach. I love his style. I think he's an authentic guy. I think I don't love all his, I like a lot of his ideas. And I think we need to, and he thinks outside the box. And I'm telling you right now, Democrats, MBC, they're not going to get them. They're not going to give that man a lot of questions. They don't want him to shine, dog. And he's going to have to get aggressive and say it like it is.
But I tell you what, if Yang tomorrow pulls a De Blasio.
He has to.
He gets in there and he gets like that.
He has to. But the thing is, that's my concern is that's not his style. But he's got it because they don't want Yang and Williamson because Yang and Williamson could do good. I'm telling you, especially Williamson because of the way she expresses it.
I haven't really followed much Williamson, so
that's my girl. Well, watch.
I'm gonna have to Google her now. I'm gonna have to Google her now.
Motivational Spurkin, and at one point in her life, she used to sell crystals. She's totally like spaced out Cali, love and peace. But the way she talks about it, she straight up. She says, "These Democrats ain't done jack for you because they paid off like farm." But the way Elizabeth Warren says that, but she says it as an outsider, not as a Democrat. It's gonna be so refreshing. And I'm telling you, they're going to want to shut that woman up. And Yang, too. So I just hope, my Yang gang, Williamson, I just hope that they just give them their chance because they didn't give everyone a fair shot today, and that's not fair to me. Including de Blasio. I don't think they gave him a fair shot, frankly.
I'm okay with de Blasio never getting a fair shot. That's just
anyway. You know what I mean?
I will say this, who we haven't spoken about, at least for tomorrow, and this is what I'm saying. This is what I will say. Biden has to have a good night. He has to have a good night.
Look at that. We didn't even talk about Biden.
If he doesn't have a good night,
he could take an L, no doubt.
He can, no doubt. Honestly, because again, he's one of those people that people are like, bro, why are you even in this joint? Yes, I know we've been telling you to come in, but then
the thing is, the issues that are the things. First of all, a lot of these issues are not Biden's sweet spot. Biden is not good at immigration stuff. He's not really a healthcare guy. The civil rights stuff, we know that Corazon, he's a good guy and he's with us generally, but he talks about it old school because he's old school. He's going to want to talk about Iran. He's going to talk about those kind of issues that are a little more Mueller report and stuff like that. So I think the questions he gets, the moderators have a big impact on Biden tomorrow because if they feed him in his comfort zone areas and don't push him on the racial stuff, they really have a big impact on how Biden comes off tomorrow. I really believe
it. I want to say this, and this is if I've got to, I don't like to make, I'm not as bold as you are when it comes to your predictions, but I will say this is that he can't, if we hear the same shit from Biden that we always been hearing from the same shit, then his trending is going to continue to go down because his trending is down while Bernie and Warren is going up. Even some of the others, Castro. If he can't make a dent as to why people are like, hey, yeah, Uncle Joe still's our best shot. That's what some people are going to he's got to be able to say that, right? Because if he can't come up and be progressive and authentic, then I think that, again, he'll still be there. He's got enough money to be there through the fall. I'm not saying,
he's going to be in the mix.
He has the potential of going out like Jeb Bush. That's what I'm going to say, right? He could having the money, having the stuff, but just being.
I've always believed that. The other thing is that he's, I'm thinking about this as like a tournament, as a series, right? Because this is Miami, so you can have a little more of an immigration flavor. The immigration homestead's right there. By the way, he hasn't gone to Homestead yet, I don't believe.
Nope.
Okay. And anyway, it's that top end shit ain't working for me. Warren shows up. To me, that means something. But he's also thinking the next debates are in Detroit, and he has this thing that he's down with black people. He has this thing in his mind that's his. He thinks it's his strength, and the reality is, in this generation, that's a real generational divide because of older African Americans that do.
And Detroit's not the same city Detroit was 10, 15 years ago either. Absolutely. There's a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of entrepreneur folks. There's
big Muslim population. You're right. It's on there's a tech element, gentrification. There's a lot of dynamics, but I'm just saying that he's thinking, well, if this is the Latino one, I'll do better in the black one because that's more my comfort zone, urban America, black folk. I don't know. I think he just thinks old school. So I think you're right. But I think it's the questions because in certain sections, he's going to do well. Nobody's going to do better than Iran. Bernie and foreign policy and even these other people, he's going to do well with that foreign policy. That's Biden has got these people by a long shot. And then and certain other issues, the Mueller, the mechanisms of the Senate, like the Mueller and the Senate filibuster, that's Biden. You can't fade that. But I could see a lot of platitudes, a lot of patronizing comments with the racial stuff. Referendo mucho Obama.
Mira, mañana might get hot. I think mañana might get heated, man.
But who's the one who has the moral authority to throw that punch? Does Harris have the guts to do it? Is she the best to do it? She could. I mean,
I think she has the guts. I think she has the guts. I'll tell you one thing.
Start, dog.
I'll be very surprised. I'll be very surprised if Harris doesn't have a couple of jabs in there. I just would be very surprised.
And Biden's gonna be like, "Well, you were the prosecutor. You don't want to throw black people in jail." Yeah, and then
let it get that way. You know what I'm saying? But she's not afraid.
Of course. But he have the guts.
The way she can make things forget it. She can do, like she work it out. Like she's not afraid of that joint.
Well, Biden have the guts to punch back to her.
That's the thing.
As the black woman, she's gonna be the only minority.
That's Canada. The thing. I mean, if I'm his advisor, I'm like, bro, that's a no-win scenario.
But you just gonna take the punch? I don't think he's just gonna take the punch, dog. He had the discipline against what's her name back in the days, the Alaskan lady. What was her name? He was good with that. Oh my god,
we forgot her name already.
Remember he debated her. He did a good balancia with that.
He was also like 10 years younger, 15 years younger, right? Whatever.
Yeah, but he, so he might, and then the group dynamic, there's gonna be a lot of people punching. There's no other haymaker people like Hickenlooper and Swalwell. Swalwell might throw some punches. He might throw some punches. But anyway, brother, this was awesome. I mean, I'm down with doing this tomorrow. I mean, I'm gonna be exhausted, but I'm down doing it tomorrow. If you're down, I'm fucking hype as shit.
I think if we can get one or two other folks on this joint, I think that'd be good. I think if we can get some of our journalist friends like Marlene Peralta or some other folks,
absolutely.
I'd be real interested here. I'll make a couple of calls, see if I can pull in some folks too. Because I'll be real interested, especially in terms of the comparison, because I think tomorrow night will be a good sense. I mean, you'll get a good idea of also, not just in terms of how night 2 was, but also in the comparison of the entire field, right?
Absolutely. No, I'm down if you're down. So we'll connect. I'm going to be on the radio show, 8:00 Eastern. So I'll be on Facebook at 8:00. WPBM with Shira Rivera. We're going to focus more. We'll talk a little bit about the debate stuff, but focus more on the immigration crisis. We're all going through a lot with that, and we didn't discuss it here. Maybe a little lighter, a little later. We want to get into the political nerd stuff, but I want to really have a leadership, a real personal, spiritual. We need to have a little therapy on that because we're all going through a lot of stress on it, and then we also have to be the activists, right? And there's a lot of other issues we'll talk about on the show with Yashira. But then, we'll get back. Before I let you go, let's read a couple comments here. A lot of good stuff on Facebook. Our homie Larry Gonzalez, Politico's headline was, "Oh, who has done the most to advance their campaign's fortunes tonight?" Multiple reporters said in the scrum, Julian Castro. He wrestled his way in, scored some major points, and came across as credible. Nice. Maritza Perez, Warren Castro 2020. Apparently there was a warm embrace at the end, LB, that people are talking about between Warren and Castro on the stage. Tomas Kennedy, who won the first night of the Dem debates. Candidates talking about raising taxes on the 1%. Raising the minimum wage, tuition pre-college, making healthcare right. Bernie Sanders and his ideas won. Hashtag not me, us. I love it. This is so awesome. Key point from the debates, Rolando Cantu from Texas. Speaking Spanish does not win you the Latinx vote. It's the issues such as healthcare, education, and other issues that affect us on a daily basis on our vote. I agree with that. Fernando Trevino, our homie, very sharp political analyst. Castro and Warren took the night, followed by Booker and de Blasio. I agree with de Blasio. Loved the Warren Castro hug at the end. Hint, hint. O'Rourke disappointed. He's right about that. Looking forward to hearing Biden, Harris, and Buttigieg tomorrow night. I'll just add in. I want to hear Marianne Williamson and Yang Gang. I love the novelty acts. Albert, this was fantastic. I want to thank our friends that watched. I know we'll have to scroll through our Facebook. There was a lot of people that watched this. Will this stay on the page?
This will stay on.
So we can forward it to people tomorrow morning.
We can forward it tomorrow.
It'll be on YouTube. It stays on YouTube, basically. Right?
It'll stay on YouTube, folks. The things are there, so it'll be all. Oh,
so this is like a morning show. This is like the Breakfast Club for Latinos here. This is fantastic because we wake. Okay, so 5 a.m. I'll be forwarding it away.
You'll be pointing out and telling people stuff like that. There,
LB, this is it, brother. We gotta do this. You're fantastic. You're an incredible talent, a great friend, and I'm just glad that we were able to do this, and it was great to have the first debate in Miami. I'm glad Latinos got a little shine out of that, and but we got a long way to go, brother. People, you sleep, and you gonna blink, and we're gonna be talking about Detroit in a month, but tomorrow night, or actually tonight, later today, A lot on the line. I think this raises the stakes. LB, thank you, brother. Any final thoughts?
Ray, I think it was. I think you couldn't have said it better yourself. I think Miami is a great way to start, and again, I think there's a bunch of other conversations that have to be had around this. Most notably, especially it's starting in Miami, but there's a huge question mark of whether or not even Democrats are even trying to invest in Florida. That's a huge question whether they should or
we're
shouldn't.
We're gonna keep banging on it because the bottom line is we're gonna have to do it ourselves, dog. The more I'm thinking about this, we need to have those conversations, and we need to have on these platforms, LB. We need to have some, and I know that's our thing, but we need to have these conversations with the Black community specifically, and the Asian American community, the Muslim community, and say we got to do this ourselves. And as we all know,
and this is
the Asian American electorate is becoming more impactful and by the way, is more progressive than Latino voters.
Well, we know that from our time at Columbia. I mean, you know that.
It's those people leading the way. Asian Jane, Toma. It's true.
And I think at the end of the day too. I think when you talk about in terms of us leading this conversation, that's part of the idea why you have platforms like Law at the Margins, why you have platforms like your talk show, because at the end of the day, both of us we know a whole trailer of folks who should be now on MSNBC talking post debate.
Well, we're inspired by Tyler Perry here. We're just gonna make our own MSNBC. How about that? We don't need them. We don't need them. By the way, Lucero Campos shared thehill.com. Search interest for Julian Castro surges by 2,400% during first debate. That's the bottom line. Let's give it up for Julian, dog. Julian, my brother, I was skeptical. I'm gonna tell you straight up, and I like you. We got mutual mentor. Your fam, your mom, my heart. I love you. We know how much love we got for San Antonio, and I spent many a time being around these people and being in the same. We have a million mutual friends, and I was like, damn, bro, with that resume going for president, and when I see you for a minute, why don't you take the shot against Ted Cruz, run for against Cornyn? We all said that, right? I got to give my man credit. He's running a good campaign. And tonight wasn't just his night. If you've been paying attention and listening to what we've been talking about, LB, on our show, is that Julian has been running in very much a Warren type of tortoise in the hair kind of thing, has run a steady, good campaign with substance, with leadership, with bold policies. And, if he could stick around, I would love to see the candidate he would be in 6-7 months.
We're part of those folks that have to help him out.
Write him a check. Thank you. That's a good way to put it. Thank you, family. We're going to do this tomorrow night. Woo! I'm still so excited. This is so exciting. I want to back it up, though, for the first debate. You could have given me another hour. I would have been fine with it. I wanted to hear more. So that's a good thing.
I did.
Good job, fam. Thanks for joining us on our maiden voyage here on the VCast. Peace.
See you tomorrow.